Her name is often whispered, but her true story shouts a message of defiant faith and extraordinary bravery. You think you know Jericho, but do you know the woman who stood on the precipice of its destruction and chose a path that would ripple through eternity? Join us as we peel back the layers of Rahab's life, revealing the untold chapters of a hero beyond the walls. Rahab. Beyond the walls of Jericho, there's a woman in ancient history who saved an entire nation by committing treason. She wasn't a queen, a prophet, or a warrior. She was a sex worker living in a doomed city, and her decision to betray her own people would echo through 3,000 years of human civilization. Her name appears in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Kings would descend from her bloodline. Yet most people who've ever heard her story have no idea what actually happened after the walls came down. This is the story of Rahab, but not the Sunday school version. This is about what happened when the dust settled, when the screaming stopped, and when a Canaanite woman who'd just watched her entire world collapse had to figure out how to survive among the very people who destroyed it. Because here's what nobody tells you. The rescue was just the beginning. Let's rewind to the moment that changed everything. Jericho, around 1400 BCE, archaeological evidence from sites like Tel-e-Sultan confirms this was a heavily fortified city with massive double walls. The inner wall approximately 12 feet thick, the outer wall 6 feet thick. Between them ran a space about 15 feet wide, where the poorest residents built their homes directly into the fortifications. Rahab lived in one of these homes. The Hebrew text describes her as a zana, a prostitute. Not a temple prostitute, as some try to soften it, just a prostitute. Her house was built into the wall because that is where marginalized people lived literally, on the edge of society. Then 2 Hebrew spies showed up at her door. Now here's where it gets interesting. Rahab had a choice. The king of Jericho had already heard rumors about Hebrew spies in the city. Soldiers were searching house to house. If Rahab turned these men in, she'd probably receive a reward. She'd certainly ensure her own safety. But instead, she hid them under stalks of flax drying on her roof, lied directly to the king's soldiers, and helped the spies escape down a scarlet rope from her window. Why would she do this? This is where most retellings focus on her faith, and yes, that's part of it. The text records her words. I know that the Lord has given you this land. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt. But let's think about what's really happening here. Rahab isn't making a religious decision in a vacuum. She's making a calculated survival choice based on intelligence gathering. As a prostitute, she had access to information other residents didn't. Men talk. Soldiers talk. Travelers talk. She'd been hearing stories about this Hebrew god for weeks, maybe months. Stories about plagues in Egypt, about an entire sea parting, about armies destroyed. She was looking at the data and reading the room. This wasn't blind faith. This was informed risk assessment by someone who learned to read people and situations to survive. And here's the thing nobody mentions. She negotiated. Before helping the spies escape, Rahab extracted a promise, not just for herself, but for her entire family. Her father, mother, brothers, sisters, everyone. The spies agreed, giving her specific instructions. Gather your family into your house, hang the scarlet cord from your window, and when we attack, stay inside. Don't come out, don't leave. That cord is your signal. The walls of Jericho fell exactly as she'd been told they would. Archaeological excavations by Kathleen Kenyon in the 1950s and John Garsting in the 1930s found evidence of walls that collapsed outward, unusual, since walls typically fall inward when breached. The destruction was total and sudden, except for one house built into the wall. Now here's where the story usually ends. Rahab and her family were saved. Everyone else died. The end. Cue the moral about faith and redemption. But that's not the end. That's barely the middle. Think about what happened next. Rahab just watched the systematic destruction of everything she'd ever known. Her neighbors, her city, her culture, gone. The text says the Israelites devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Rahab stood in the rubble with her elderly parents, her siblings, and nothing else. No home, no possessions, no community. She was a Canaanite woman from a people group the Israelites were commanded to completely separate from, now expected to integrate into Hebrew society. How do you even begin to process that level of trauma and transition? The text gives us one crucial detail, but Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute, with her family and all who belonged to her, because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. She lives among the Israelites. Not she became an Israelite. She lived among them. There's a difference. This suggests she maintained some separate identity initially, some boundary between her past and her present. But here's where her story becomes absolutely extraordinary. Fast forward to the New Testament, written over 1,400 years after Jericho fell. Matthew's Gospel opens with a genealogy tracing Jesus Christ's lineage from Abraham forward. In that genealogy appear only 5 women unusual for ancient records that typically listed only men. One of those 5 is Rahab. Matthew 1-5 records that Rahab married a man named Salmon and gave birth to Boaz. If you know the book of Ruth, you know Boaz married Ruth, and they had Obed, who had Jesse, who had King David. From David's line came Solomon, eventually Joseph, and Jesus. Rahab the Canaanite prostitute became the great-grandmother of Israel's greatest king. But how did we get from living among the Israelites to marrying into one of the most prominent families of the tribe of Judah? That's the gap the text doesn't fill, and it's where her real story likely unfolded. Jewish tradition fills in some blanks. The Talmud suggests Salmon was one of the 2 spies Rahab saved. Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus mentions her with respect. Rabbinic literature claims she was one of the most beautiful women in history, and that she eventually converted fully to Judaism, becoming a symbol of righteous conversion. But conversion in that cultural context wasn't like walking into a church and saying a prayer. This would have been a complete transformation of identity learning, a new language, new customs, new laws, new religious practices, abandoning every god she'd ever known for one she'd only heard about, accepting a community that had destroyed her city. The psychological resilience required for that integration is staggering. Think about it from the Israelites' perspective, too. They've just witnessed God supernaturally destroy Jericho. They've been commanded repeatedly not to intermarry with Canaanites, not to adopt their practices, not to let them corrupt the community. And here comes Rahab, not only a Canaanite, but a prostitute claiming protection because she helped the spies. She must have faced suspicion, prejudice, whispers. That's the Canaanite woman. That's the prostitute who betrayed her own people, even saved. She carried labels that would have followed her everywhere. Yet somehow she didn't just survive among them. She thrived. She married well. She had a son who would become the grandfather of Ruth's husband, meaning she became part of the story of another foreign woman who integrated into Israel and found acceptance. Here's what makes Rahab's story so powerful. She represents radical redemption without erasure. The New Testament writers never hide what she was. Matthew calls her Rahab the prostitute, right there in Jesus' genealogy. Hebrews 11:31 honors her faith. By faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. James 2:25 holds her up as an example of faith demonstrated through action. Her past isn't sanitized. It's acknowledged and then transcended. This is fundamentally different from the clean slate narrative we often hear about redemption. Rahab doesn't get a clean slate. She gets a scarlet cord, a visible marker of her past, her choices, her identity, that becomes the very thing that saves her. That cord, many scholars note, echoes the scarlet thread Tamar used in Genesis 38, another sexually complicated woman in Jesus' genealogy. These threads connect stories of women who operated outside acceptable boundaries, yet became essential to God's larger story. Rahab's redemption doesn't erase her prostitution. It transforms the meaning of it. She went from selling her body to survive to negotiating the survival of her entire family, from being marginalized on the literal edge of society to being integrated into its center, from traitor to matriarch, from prostitute to grandmother of kings. So what happened after the walls fell? Rahab learned to live in the tension between who she'd been and who she was becoming. She navigated suspicion and built trust. She raised a son who would value love over ethnicity, shown in his treatment of Ruth. She proved that your starting point doesn't determine your ending. That faith isn't about perfection, it's about positioning yourself on the right side of history, even when it costs everything. The archaeological ruins of Jericho still exist today. You can visit Tel Sultan and see the remains of those ancient walls. But Rahab's real legacy isn't in ruins. It's in the genealogy of the Messiah. It's in every story of someone who started in the wrong place, made the right choice, and discovered that redemption doesn't require forgetting the past. It requires moving forward anyway. The walls fell, but Rahab, she's still standing. Thank you for watching. Do like, share, and subscribe for you to see more interesting biblical events reenacted. Until the next time, remain blessed.